Okay, I want you to try something right now. If you're near a computer or, if you can safely pull out your phone, open up Google Maps.
Oh, okay.
Seriously, do it. I want you to switch to the satellite view and just scroll over to the Bay of Bengal.
Right, that huge patch of ocean between India and Thailand.
Exactly. Now, start zooming in. You're looking for a small, kind of square island. It's incredibly green, just dense jungle, and it's surrounded by this beautiful turquoise ring of coral reefs.
And from that satellite view, it looks like the absolute definition of paradise. I mean, you see those unspoiled white sand beaches, that crystal clear water. It looks like the kind of place a luxury resort would charge you a fortune to, disconnect for a week.
Exactly. It looks inviting. It looks peaceful. But here's the reality check, and it's a hard one. If you step foot on that sand, you will almost certainly die.
And that isn't a metaphor. It's not a maybe. It's a statistical probability that's bordering on a guarantee.
We are looking at North Sentinel Island. And today, we are doing a deep dive into what might be the most mysterious, the most dangerous, and the most ethically complex place on Earth.
Yeah.
We're talking about a place with a strict 3-mile exclusion zone that's enforced by the Indian Navy. It is, for all intents and purposes, a living time capsule.
And we really need to be clear about what time capsule means here. I mean, we're not talking about some town that's stuck in the 1950s or a community that rejects electricity.
Right.
We are talking about deep, deep human history. The people on this island, the Sentinelese, they are widely considered to be the most isolated humans on the planet.
So the mission for this deep dive is, it's pretty clear. We've got a huge stack of articles, anthropological reports, even some really harrowing journals right here.
A lot to get through.
A ton. And we need to figure out who they are, how they've survived for so long, and why the Indian government is basically patrolling the waters just to keep us out.
But we also have to look at the darker side. The deadly history of contact, that tragedy in 2018, and this impossible ethical dilemma of whether leaving them alone is, actually the right thing to do.
It's a fascinating mix of, anthropology, biology, and ethics. And it challenges pretty much everything we assume about how the modern world works.
It really does.
Let's start with just the scale of this isolation.
Yeah.
Because I think when we hear isolated tribe, we tend to think, oh, maybe a few hundred years.
Right, since the colonial era or something.
Yeah. But the source material throws out a number that honestly just stops you in your tracks. 60,000 years.
It's a number so big it almost loses meaning, doesn't it? But to put that in perspective for you, 60,000 years means they likely got to that island during the first major migration of humans out of Africa.
Wait, how? They walked there? To an island?
They walked there. Well, sea levels were much, much lower back then. They probably walked across land bridges that just don't exist anymore. And when the ice melted and the oceans rose at the end of the last ice age...
Well, water just cut them off.
Exactly. They've been stranded on that rock effectively since the dawn of humanity.
Okay, let's contextualize that timeline. That's before the Great Pyramids were even a sketch on a napkin.
Long before. It's before the concept of agriculture was invented anywhere on Earth. It's before the wheel. While the rest of us were inventing writing, building empires, fighting world wars, and creating the internet, they were just there.
Doing the same thing.
In the same spot, doing the same thing. It's mind-boggling.
They're literally the only people who didn't get the memo that the world changed.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Anthropologists classify them as pre-Neolithic, which basically means they're living in the Stone Age. And the sources highlight one detail that really drives this home.
The fire thing.
The fire thing. It's very likely they do not know how to make fire.
That was the part that really surprised me. I just assumed making fire was, human 101. But you're saying they can use it, but they can't start it from scratch.
The evidence suggests they're fire keepers, not fire makers. So they wait for lightning to strike a tree, start a natural fire. Then they have these really elaborate methods to collect the embers in hollowed out trees or special clay pots.
And they have to tend those embers religiously to keep them burning.
Constantly. So if the fire goes out...
They're in the dark until the next big storm.
Yeah. It completely changes your relationship with nature when you are that dependent on it. You can't just flick a lighter. Fire is this precious, finite gift from the sky.
It also changes your relationship with the rest of the world. Because with that kind of total isolation, their worldview must be completely unique. They don't have our maps. They don't have our history books.
It's very likely they believe they're the only people in the world.
Wow.
Or at least the only people that matter. So anyone else they see, people in ships and helicopters, they might not even register as human to them. We might be spirits or demons or just monsters from the ocean.
They have no concept of India or an iPhone or anything.
They are sovereigns of their own tiny, self-contained universe.
But that universe isn't impenetrable. And this is where the story gets really intense. Because for centuries, the outside world has tried to knock on their door.
And the Sentinelese have a very specific way of answering. They answer with arrows. It's a consistent history of violence. They have a very clear shoot-on-sight policy for anything that gets too close.
There's one story in the research from 1981 that really feels like the plot of a survival thriller. The incident with the cargo ship, the Primrose.
Right, the Primrose, a massive freighter that was carrying, of all things, poultry feed.
So picture this. This ship is sailing through the Bay of Bengal, and a huge cyclone hits. It's total chaos. They end up running aground hard right on the coral reef of North Sentinel. So put yourself in the captain's shoes. It's the middle of the night. Waves are pounding the hull. You are stuck. But then the sun comes up. You see an island, and you think, okay, thank goodness, we're safe. We're near land.
That relief evaporated pretty quickly.
No kidding. The captain radios for help, just says, we're stuck, send a tugboat. But a few hours later, he picks up his binoculars to scan the beach. And what he sees is not a rescue party. It's 50 naked men coming out of the jungle.
And they aren't waving hello. They're carrying spears, bows, and arrows. And then they start doing something that absolutely terrified the crew.
They started building rafts.
They started building rafts.
That's the detail that gets me. They weren't just, posturing from the beach. They were preparing a naval boarding action.
The panic in the captain's logs is just palpable. The tone shifts completely. He goes from a standard distress call to these frantic messages. He literally radioed, "They are building rafts. They are armed. They were coming to kill us. Send a helicopter and now W. We need an airdrop of weapons."
Can you imagine that clash of eras? You're on a modern steel ship, and you're about to be besieged by, essentially, Stone Age warriors. It is. It's something out of Heart of Darkness happening in the 1980s.
Fortunately for the crew, the storm that crashed them also saved them. The waves were just too rough for the tribesmen to get their little rafts past the breakers.
So the surf kept them apart just long enough.
Just long enough for a helicopter to winch the whole crew to safety. But here's where the story gets really interesting from an anthropological standpoint. The crew gets away, but the ship...
The ship stays there.
Yes. If you go on Google Earth today, right now, you can still see the rusting wreckage of the Primrose stuck on that reef.
But for the Sentinelese, this wasn't just a shipwreck. This was an iron mine.
Exactly. Because up until this point, they're using stone, bone, wood. Suddenly, a mountain of high-quality steel just appears on their doorstep. They start paddling out to the wreck, stripping metal from the hull and sharpening it.
So by crashing a ship there, we accidentally jump-started their technology.
We effectively gave them the Iron Age by mistake. And that matters because it changed their weaponry. An arrow tipped with stone or bone is dangerous, sure.
But an arrow tipped with sharpened industrial steel.
That can punch through armor, it can fly straighter, it makes them significantly more lethal.
It's such a dark irony. We try to stay away to preserve their way of life, but our garbage ends up upgrading their arsenal.
And they are incredibly skilled with that arsenal. Which brings us to another major event where the world really held its breath, the 2004 tsunami.
Oh, I remember this vividly. The Indian Ocean tsunami was just devastating. It wiped out coastlines across the whole region.
Hundreds of thousands of people died. And naturally, people started looking at the map and seeing this low-lying island sitting right in the path of the wave.
The assumption was they were gone.
It was a global concern.
Yeah.
The scientific community was practically writing their obituary. A tribe living on the beach, no early warning system, no sirens. They must have been wiped out.
So the Indian Coast Guard sends a helicopter a few days later to assess the damage. They fly low over the beach expecting to see, I don't know, devastation bodies.
Right, or at least some shell shock survivors needing food.
And instead, they get a very different reception.
A warrior runs out onto the sand, aims his bow at this loud, hovering metal beast, and just fires an arrow straight at it.
The pilot didn't shoot back, he just took a photo. And that photo became iconic. It was on the cover of newspapers everywhere.
It was this perfect visual of man against machine, but more importantly, it was proof they survived.
How did they survive, though, when so many modern cities didn't?
It comes back to that 60,000 years of knowledge. While we rely on technology for warnings, they rely on reading the natural world. They likely felt the ground tremors or saw the ocean recede in that weird way it does.
And they knew exactly what it meant.
They knew to get to high ground long before the wave hit. It's an amazing resilience.
It really challenges that idea that primitive means ignorant. But this defiance, this whole leave us alone attitude, it leads us to the most tragic chapter of this deep dive. And this one is recent. We're talking 2018.
The tragedy of John Allen Chau.
This story really gripped the world when it broke. John Allen Chau, he was a 26-year-old American. And looking at the sources on his background, he seems like a genuinely impressive guy, an EMT, athletic, a survivalist.
But he was also deeply, deeply religious. And he viewed North Sentinel Island through a purely theological lens.
He didn't see an anthropological curiosity.
No, he saw a spiritual battlefield. In his journals, he actually called the island Satan's last stronghold. He believed it was his personal destiny, ordained by God, to bring Christianity to these people.
We have to be clear. He knew this was illegal, right? This wasn't a tourist making a mistake.
Oh, he absolutely knew. He spent years planning it. He knew the Indian laws. He knew their hostile history. But he felt he was operating on a higher authority. He believed God would shield him from the arrows.
And the only reason we know exactly what happened is because he left this remarkably detailed diary.
He gave it to the local fishermen he paid to smuggle him into the exclusion zone. And reading the excerpts, it is just haunting. You can see the collision coming.
It gives us a blow-by-blow account.
Yeah.
So, day one, John takes a kayak and paddles toward the beach. He's not going empty-handed. He brings gifts he thinks will bridge the gap.
Right. He brought fish, scissors, safety pins, and a football.
A football. It's almost innocent, isn't it? Trying to win them over with a game of catch.
He gets close to the beach, starts shouting greetings, and the tribe just rushes him. A teenager fires an arrow.
And this detail. It feels like something out of a movie script, but it's real. The arrow hit the Bible that John was holding against his chest.
It pierced the book. Now, for most of us, that is a clear sign to turn around. That is the universe screaming, "Go home!"
And it terrified him, too. He retreated to the boat. The diary entry from that night is just gut-wrenching. He wrote, "My name is John. I love you, and Jesus loves you. God, I don't want to die."
You can hear the fear, but also this confusion. He genuinely didn't understand why they wouldn't accept his love.
But his conviction outweighed his fear. And that's where the tragedy becomes inevitable.
Day 2, he goes back, but this time he tries a different tactic. He strips down to his underwear.
Why? To show he wasn't hiding any weapons?
Exactly. He wanted to be vulnerable. He starts singing worship songs, and for a moment, according to the fishermen watching from a distance, the tribe actually tolerated him.
But that tolerance didn't last.
No. They became aggressive again. He swam back to the boat one last time, and then came day 3. The end. He told the fishermen to leave without him. He knew he wasn't coming back.
The fishermen moved the boat away, but watched with binoculars, and they saw John walk onto the beach.
And then the final image. The tribe dragging his body across the sand with a rope tied around his neck and burying him right there.
It's heartbreaking. You have a young man who genuinely thought he was doing the right thing, meeting this violent end. And then comes the aftermath. The family, the U.S. government.
Yeah.
And the big question is, do we go get the body?
And the Indian government made a very difficult, but I think most agree, a correct decision. They decided not to recover the body.
That must have been incredibly hard for the family. But what was the logic there? Why leave him?
Because retrieving the body would have meant a military operation. You'd have to send in armed police or soldiers to secure the beach. The Sentinelese would have attacked. That's a guarantee.
And the soldiers would have had to shoot back in self-defense.
Right. So to get the body of one man who went there voluntarily and illegally, you might have had to wipe out a significant portion of the tribe he went to save.
Wow. The paradox is just...
It's a perfect, tragic paradox. John went there to save them, but recovering him could have destroyed them.
This brings us right to the core of this whole deep dive, the so what of it all. This massive ethical dilemma, what they call the human zoo debate.
It's the question that always comes up. Why don't we just force contact? Why not show up with enough force to pacify them, give them gifts, and make friends? Why keep them in a bubble?
And the answer isn't just about arrows. It's about biology.
Right. It's about germs. We have to remember these people have been genetically isolated for 60,000 years. Their immune systems have never seen our pathogens.
So things that are minor annoyances to us, a common cold, the flu, measles, could be completely apocalyptic for them.
We have historical precedent for this. When Europeans arrived in the Americas, smallpox and measles wiped out millions of indigenous people. A handshake is effectively genocide in this scenario. We could easily kill 90% of them within a few weeks.
That's the biological reality that keeps the exclusion zone in place. But looking at the sources, there's a pretty heavy philosophical split here, right? two sides to this.
Yes, let's look at the two main camps. Side A is the argument for sovereignty. This view says, leave them alone, they are happy, they appear healthy, well-fed, they're free from taxes, war, pollution, depression, social media.
They're the masters of their own domain. Who are we to impose our way of life on them? The prime directive argument.
Exactly. But side B is the interventionist argument, and it asks a tougher question. Is it cruel to leave them in a Stone Age trap? Think about it. They have no modern medicine. If a child gets an infection from a simple cut, they might die. If a woman has a difficult childbirth, she might die. Do they not deserve the choice to join the world? Do they not deserve antibiotics?
That is such a tough question, because they can't ask for those things if they don't even know they exist.
Yeah.
But if we try to tell them,
We might kill them with a sneeze. It's an impossible bind. We can't offer them the choice without potentially killing them, and that's why the current policy of the Indian government is eyes on, hands off.
explain how that works in practice.
They patrol the waters to keep that buffer zone clear. They make sure poachers don't go in, which is a real problem. They make sure adventure seekers like John Allen Chau don't get close.
But they don't try to enter.
They do not try to enter. They watch from a distance just to ensure the tribe is still there, but they let them live on their own terms.
It seems like the only viable option, even if it feels unsatisfying to our curiosity. We want to know what language they speak, what their religion is, what they call themselves. But the price of knowing is destroying them.
Right? It requires us to suppress our instinct to explore and to control. And that's hard for modern society.
So what does this all mean for us? Why does this story stick with people so much? Why are we all so fascinated by this little green square on a map?
I think the Sentinelese act as a mirror.
A mirror. How so?
When we look at them, standing on the beach with spears, naked, painted, we tend to see savages. We see people stuck in the past. But what happens if you flip the perspective?
Okay.
Imagine being them. You are living in your home the same way your ancestors have for millennia. You have your community, your fire, your ocean, and then these loud, terrifying metal birds appear in the sky. Massive ships show up on the horizon, belching black smoke, destroying the ocean around you. The people on them bring strange objects of necessity and invisible death in the form of disease.
When you put it that way, we don't look like the good guys.
Exactly. When they look at us, perhaps they don't see civilized rescuers. Perhaps they see monsters. They see a world that consumes everything. And they have decided, violently and firmly, that they want no part of it.
They're arguably the only people on Earth who have successfully said no to the modern world. They looked at what we have to offer, and they sent an arrow instead of an application form.
And when you look at the state of the modern world sometimes, the stress, the conflict, the environmental collapse, you have to wonder if they might be onto something.
That is a heavy thought. In a world where we are constantly connected, constantly notified, constantly tracked, the Sentinelese might be the only ones who are truly free.
It's a freedom that comes at a high price, a life without medicine, without the safety net of technology, but it is theirs, and maybe that's worth protecting.
Well, that gives us plenty to think about next time we are scrolling through Google Maps. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the Forbidden Island.
Always a pleasure to explore these edges of the map with you.
See you on the next one.